Hi, welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Now, during the week, the SNP launched its manifesto on very, very thin paper. It was a very thin document. There wasn't a lot there, and none of it, of course, was for this Parliament. It was all for the next Holyrood election and when they are going to give that push for independence. Very little of substance in it, and a lot of people, myself included, basically ridiculed it for its complete lack of anything coherent, no logical thought. Well, they're launching another manifesto, presumably because the last one was no good. But this one is for rural affairs. This is for, that bit of the country that doesn't matter to the SNP. Everything outside that central belt. And I don't suppose there'll be much in there to make much of a trumpeting hurrah about either. However, within this and buried, there is something, and I've got to say, what I consider to be very sinister. The sort of thing you'd expect from National Socialists in Germany in the 30s. Because they're saying that any Tory candidates that backed Brexit should, in their terms, face consequences. Now, I think that's sinister. I think that is implied threats. But one doesn't expect anything less from an organisation like the SNP. What are they going to do? You voted that way. There will be consequences. We're going to send the brown shirts round and give you a good duffing up. That's what that reads as. Let's have a look to see if it is, because I wouldn't put it past them, would you? Here goes. So this is from the Standard, and it is Swinney saying Tory candidates should face consequences for backing Brexit. Now they're going to say Tory candidates. What he means is every single person in Britain needs to face consequences. What's he going to do? Round us all up? Put us in some kind of Caledonian concentration camp? Because that's what he'd like. He doesn't like the fact that people out there voted against what he conceives to be the correct way. Remember, Swinney, the majority of people voted to leave, whether you like it or not. And that, of course, is the big problem that Swinney has. Facts. Facts don't give a flying monkey what Swinney perceives. Facts are facts, and the majority voted to leave. End of story. It's one of those, again, those things where democracy is such a terrible, terrible thing for the SNP. They absolutely loathe democracy because people have a habit of, independent thought. And not the right sort of independence. Anyway, the First Minister will launch his party's rural manifesto at the Royal Highland Show in Edinburgh on Saturday. Tell me, which part of the Highlands is Edinburgh actually in? Why not have this done in, say, Inverness, Fort William, somewhere, actually. Anyway, Scotland's First Minister has said that the Conservative candidates should face the consequences of backing Brexit at the last election. Why? I think SNP candidates should face the consequences of voting for independence. Does that sound good? Let's lock up all the SNP because they go against the majority. Would he like that? No. Why this insidious evilness? Why this constant low-level hum of threats of, physical harm that emanates so easily and readily from the SNP? John Swinney has criticised Tories Andrew Bowie and Douglas Ross, who are standing to be elected to Westminster again on July the 4th. He said their actions of backing former Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Brexit proposals at the 2019 vote was a betrayal to Scotland. No, it wasn't. How can it possibly be a betrayal? Scotland voted to remain in the United Kingdom. So the people of Scotland were happy to accept democracy. You belong to a group, that group votes, you accept the democracy. What is truly disloyal, what is truly anti-democratic, is the SNP's view that they are right, even though they are a small majority. He was speaking ahead of a campaign visit to the Royal Highland Show in Edinburgh, at which the SNP will launch a complete and utter pile of pish that it will call its Rural Manifesto. And it will contain pledges including a rural visa pilot scheme to mitigate labour shortages and an EU veterinary agreement to ease exports and imports. They don't have the power to do that. They can say, again, this Nothing that's going to come to this Parliament. They don't have the powers for a rural visa pilot. They don't have the powers for EU veterinary agreements. They're both retained by Westminster. So again, their rural manifesto has got nothing to do with Westminster, nothing to do with this election. It's if in 25 years we somehow manage eventually to get independence, this is what we want. What are you doing for the people of Scotland today, Swinney? Oh, that's right, sweet FA. Because there's nothing in your manifesto that talks about the Scotland that the people are living in today. It's all about some idyllic, imaginary utopia 25, 30, 50 years away. You'll be dead. I'll be dead. Nobody is ever going to see this. It's complete and utter bullshit. It's a waste of time, effort, money and resources. You've killed a tree to produce a turd. And it doesn't matter how much glitter you spread on it. It's still a stinking turd of a manifesto. He said, at this election, it's time for political leaders to be honest. That's a joke. And a very simple and obvious truth is that the public already understand you can't claim back rural Scotland and back Brexit. Yes, you can. Of course you can. Why can't you? You've put nothing in your manifesto to say anything about it. Your manifesto is an empty, vapid piece of crap. He said, during the last Westminster election, the Tories in rural Scotland shamefully sold Boris Johnson's Brexit, making promise after promise, and every single one of them has now been broken. Have you seen your own manifesto from 2019? How's that 100,000 children out of poverty going? Oh, that's right, yeah. Even more have gone in. How about that promise to grow the economy? Oh, that's right, the economy has shrunk. How about your promise to lift up education? No, further downhill. What about the NHS? No, that's in the toilet. Don't be comparing other people's manifestos when you're the ones in power and screwing up royally at every single opportunity. Not one thing, as the SNP got right. Full of shit. Anyway, he says, those Tory MPs now deserve to face the democratic consequences. He doesn't like democracy. How can he talk? How can he possibly open that lying gash of a mouth and talk about democracy when he denies the reality of democracy, which is that Scotland voted to stay in the Union? And he's about to be taught another lesson in democracy when he's watching, if not zero, then very, very few MPs returned to Westminster because the people of Scotland have rejected the SNP, their evilness, their incredible ineptitude. People are fed up of their criminality, of their corruption. They're fed up of the theft, the thievery that's going on now, when they're stealing public money to push party politics by using government resources for this election. They are a bunch of crooks. You've got Sturgeon possibly being investigated on 3 separate investigations. You have to wonder how many years in prison she's going to end up with. The whole party is riven with it. And he's sitting there and dares to talk about democracy and dares to talk about consequences. The man's a fool. He says his party's rural manifesto, he said, will help communities through the damage inflicted by Brexit, although he can't name one thing. He said, so providing certainty on farm funding, which has been fully funded by the Westminster government, as promised in the Brexit run-up. He said the Scottish Rural Visa Scheme for agri-workers. So you want to bring people in? Well, if you've got unemployed people in Scotland, why are you bringing people in? Get the unemployed up there and do that. Oh no, we don't want that because we can pay the agri-workers below minimum wage. There's a term for that. It's called slave labour. If you aren't paying people minimum wage, slave labour. But you can get around it with agri-workers. They're exempted. You pay Scots to do it. Oh, we won't do it for that money. Up the money. We won't do it for that money. Up the money. Okay, I'll do it for that money. But then all the products are very expensive. Well, that's right. You're now paying the correct price for food. You're not paying the price that you're benefiting from slave labour. Good on you, John. That's what you want to say. Yes, I want to bring people in and give them below par wages. What kind of evil prick are you? Slave labour, John. Well done. Keep going. Good policy. Also, will these people go when you've brought them in? No, because you want to bring them in and let them be here forever. Unchecked, unwarranted, unvetted. You don't know who you're bringing in, do you? You don't know what kind of criminals are coming in. But it's okay, because you won't have to live with them. The Scottish Tories released their own rural manifesto at the same time this week, same event earlier this week, declaring farmers have been shamefully neglected by the SNP. Well, yes, because all that money that went up to the SNP to cover rural affairs and things was all kept. £1 billion. £1 billion went up to go into rural affairs, and the SNP spunked it away on other things. It never got to the actual farmers. It's the same as the money for retail, non-domestic rates never got to the shops. It's the same as fisheries money never got to the fishermen. All this money going up. And then the SNP dares moan when the levelling up money goes directly to the councils. It's so that they know the councils get it. If it went to the SNP government, these councils would never see a penny. Corrupt, the lot of them. Screw them. July the 4th, be free. Get rid of the SNP. Get rid of them, bankrupt them, and get rid of the likes of that slimy toad there, who just lies and lies and lies out of his gash. Coming up. Bit early in the morning, really, to be getting ranty, but they do half drag it out of you, don't they? Oh, it's just and it's all bollocks, and there is nothing in that manifesto, their other manifesto. Don't worry, wait a week, there'll be a third. But there's nothing in this manifesto for Scotland today. It's all that utopian vision of an independent Scotland, and it's all bollocks. They can never implement the things in that manifesto because they're never ever going to have independence. Why can't they accept reality? Is it too hard? Anyway, thanks very much for listening. We'll round off there. We'll speak soon.